The Second World War was considered as the most widespread and terrifying war in the history of mankind. There were more than 100 million people from over 30 countries directly or indirectly involved, and over 60 million casualties. One of the major reasons for such mass destruction was the advanced weaponry used. During World War II, the focus was placed on innovation, technology, communication, and medicine to gain the upper hand. Hundreds of innovative weapons were manufactured by the United States, Germany, Great Britain, Japan, the USSR, and many other countries. Infantry weapons like the M1 Garand, MG34, and Luger P08, along with the famous Tommy gun, are familiar from countless war movies and documentaries. These weapons changed the nature of combat, allowing soldiers to lay down constant fire and produced in gigantic quantities. The most iconic and famous weapons of their time are not always the best or the most practical. However, this is a list of weapons in which each one was so far ahead of the competition that soldiers in the battlefields of World War II would jump at any opportunity to capture an enemy that had them, even dumping their own equipment in favor of the new weapon. Thompson submachine gun. There are very few truly iconic firearms, ones that the lay public as well as gun nuts can identify at first sight. Not only are those instantly recognizable guns a perfect representation of the era in which they were designed and first used, but they have a look and feel all of their own that sets them apart from the rest of the firearms of the world. Already emblematic for its U.S. Prohibition-era use by both criminals and police, the Thompson SMG was especially treasured by paratroopers for its effectiveness in close-quarters combat. The United States produced over 1.5 million Thompson submachine guns during World War II. The Marine Corps had been using the Thompson SMG for years before World War II started, but after the United States entered the war, the Thompson finally was placed in full production to stock the arsenals of the United States, and it proved to be one of the most effective and desired firearms in the hands of the U.S. soldiers around the world. The model mass-produced for the U.S. Army beginning in 1942 was the M1A1, which was simpler and cheaper. Usually equipped with a 30-round magazine, the Thompson fired .45 caliber bullets, very common for the U.S. forces at the time, and provided excellent stopping power. M1 Garand. The M1 Garand was the standard U.S. Army infantry rifle during World War II, a semi-automatic rifle that General George S. Patton called the greatest battle implement ever devised. In most battles, the Garand's speed of fire combined with the powerful .30-06 cartridge gave U.S. troops a distinct advantage. Submachine guns were coming into wide adoption, but they only provided a benefit at close range. Everyone wanted a firearm that provided similar firepower to a machine gun, but was accurate over great distances, like a bolt-action rifle. And while various solutions were coming to light, none of them provided the same elegant solution to the problem that John Garand did. Whereas the German, Italian, and Japanese armies still issued bolt-action rifles as the standard for their infantry, the M1 was semi-automatic and retained high accuracy. Among the obvious advantages this provided, it led to the Japanese strategy of bonsai charge being far less effective, since they now faced an enemy with a high rate of fire. The M1 could also be accessorized with a bayonet or even a grenade launcher. The M1 Garand is a masterpiece of firearm engineering, the perfect blend of wood and steel. It's an amazing piece of history, both for its engineering achievement and the role it played in history. Luger P08 9mm pistol. George Luger designed one of the world's most iconic pistols. It is one of the first modern, mass-produced, semi-automatic, detachable box magazine-fed handguns. It was the first gun chambered in what is now the world's most popular centerfire handgun cartridge, the 9x19, also called the 9mm Luger. The Luger P08 was first produced in 1900 and was quickly adopted by German forces. As such, its first combat experience came in the form of World War I as a common sidearm. While popular, its main drawbacks such as limited reliability showed in the mud and blood of the trenches. Following the First World War, the Luger was once again adopted by German forces for the Second World War. Here, it was more popular with officers as a specialty weapon. This also led to it being considered a treasure among the soldiers looting the dead bodies of German soldiers. Though, by late 1944, any Allied soldier captured having a Luger in his possession was most likely executed if found by German troops. Nonetheless, they were still kept in the hundreds as trophies. The Luger P08 ceased production in 1945, and, by this time, thousands had been made. German MG-34 and MG-42. The MG-34 proved to be the first successful general-purpose machine gun, meaning it could be employed in both heavy and medium machine gun roles. The recoil-operated air-cooled machine gun was developed even before the Nazis took power, and it introduced a new concept in machine guns. It could operate as a medium machine gun in a fire support role with just its built-in bipod, or, when used with a Lafette tripod, could be used as a heavy machine gun, with a rate of fire of 800 to 900 rounds per minute, an effective firing range of 2,000 meters, and a maximum fire range of 4,700 meters. It could literally take command of the battlefield. If the MG-34 had an issue, it was that it was expensive and time-consuming to produce, a trend that the German military needed to overcome during the war. The result could have been a lackluster gun, but instead, it gave the world the MG-42, one of the most lethal machine guns of the Second World War. While it utilized stamped parts instead of the machined ones of the MG-34, this new weapon proved to be reliable and easy to operate. It had a high rate of fire of 1,200 rounds per minute, and the distinctive sound of it being fired led to the nickname Hitler's Buzzsaw. The MG-42 also had the same range as the MG-34, but another improvement was an easier-to-change barrel, something highly important in an air-cooled machine gun with such a high rate of fire. Colt 1911. One of the most popular handguns ever made, the M1 911 set the standard for the 20th century pistol. As we look back on firearms that helped American soldiers fight for freedom, it's impossible not to devote some time to the 1911 A1 in 45 ACP. The standard issue sidearm for the U.S. Armed Forces from 1911 until 1986, the M1 911 has even been modified for use in various service branches to this day. Colt is the only brand that has continuously produced Model 1911 A1s since World War II. During the war, Colt delivered nearly 400,000. The Colt 1911 was developed by Browning during the Philippine-American War because troops needed more stopping power from their weapons. The .45 caliber rounds of the Colt offered just that. On many documented occasions, a single shot from a .45 provided enough power to decisively stop an enemy. As part of the 1st Marine Division in 1944, the legendary Colonel Walter Walsh did just that following the invasion of Okinawa, Japan. It was witnessed that he used an M1911 to shoot a Japanese sniper at 80 yards, demonstrating its accuracy potential with one-hand shooting. American soldiers fighting close-quarter battles have often reached for an M1911, and the .45 has proved to be a reliable performance benchmark. Though modern M1911s may possess DNA from John Browning's masterpiece, historic collectors prefer the original mil-spec configurations, or something very close to it. SVT-40. Over the years, the SVT-40 has often been mislabeled as the Soviets' take on the M1 Garand. The first gun that Tokarev designed entered service in 1938 as the SVT-38, using the 7.62 by 54mm cartridge. The results were not good, and the reaction from troops were quite negative. Soldiers found the SVT-38 simply too long and cumbersome, difficult to maintain, and worst of all, it had a removable box magazine that fell out at inappropriate times. The weapon was redesigned and designated the SVT-40. It was lighter and, more importantly, simpler to produce, something the Red Army planners appreciated. By war's end, nearly 5.5 million SVT-40 were produced. It is worth noting that more of the SVT-40s were produced earlier in the war than later, as the weapon also didn't live up to the demands of the Red Army. Basically, the problem was that the Soviets needed an easy-to-produce and reliable gun, and the SVT-40 proved to be neither.